The New York Mets have appeared to move on from first baseman Pete Alonso. Bob Uecker unfortunately has passed away. The Mets have signed Jesse Winker. The Cubs finally come to a decision with Kyle Tucker. That and more ahead next here at The Upside. And welcome into MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys spending some time with us on a Thursday evening. A lot happened today in baseball, and we're going to get right into it. We'll start first with the big story around Pete Alonso, long expected to re-sign with the New York Mets. It was long thought to be a matter of, what contract was he going to sign, a long-term deal, short-term deal. But everything we heard was that the Mets were ultimately going to be the landing spot for him. Today is the first time we can say that it's definitively not the favorite for Pete Alonso at this point. Now, Pete is still out there, still is looking for a long-term deal, only had offered a 3-year deal with opt-outs after the first and second year to the Mets and nobody else. So we'll see what this means for his market going forward. But it seems like the Mets have already made their decision. They bring in Jesse Winker, still looking to make some other additions around that lineup. I'm curious what the meeting was that they had with Tanner Scott a couple of weeks ago. If they don't have the money for a guy like Pete Alonso in their lineup, where exactly are they finding the money for Tanner Scott? Are they having an organizational mandate to save a little bit of money after spending the money on Juan Soto? A little bit curious to say the least anyway here. But Jesse Winker gets a 1-year deal, $7.5 million, I believe, with a little bit extra bonuses on the back end of that one as well. But a good signing for them. This probably means Vientos will be their first baseman. Winker will play a little bit of DH next year. I wonder if they end up holding on to Marte as opposed to trading him for some bullpen help. But a curious last 24 hours, to say the least, for the New York Mets. They don't address a big starting pitcher. They instead decide to spread the money around in that starting staff. Manaea, Montas, Holmes, Griffin Canning, among others. Then in that bullpen, they're still looking for an 8th-inning setup guy. They're looking for a left-handed reliever. Yesterday, they were connected to Tim Hill. Now they make the addition of Jesse Winker in their lineup and don't spend the money for Pete Alonso. Who exactly is going to be hitting behind Juan Soto in that lineup? remains to be seen. But I guess if you're looking at this thing on the whole, if you're a New York Mets fan, you say, hey, the replacement for Pete Alonso in this lineup is Juan Soto. The replacement for Pete Alonso in this lineup as far as first base is just Vientos moving over. I guess that's the way they're looking at it right now, but just looking at this situation from 1,000 feet away, if I'm a New York Mets fan, I feel a lot less secure in my prediction that the Mets are the second best team in the National League without Pete Alonso there. Their lineup, while better with Juan Soto in there, certainly is lacking a little bit of thump as far as what Pete Alonso brings them. Now, I'm sure they'll try to address that at some point during the season, whether that be a trade or some other avenue that they still try to add some offense. But the easy answer, the one that they had right in front of them, that all they had to do was just get him to sign on the dotted line, was Pete Alonso. Now, the money might have been too high, according to multiple reports. They weren't really willing to go up to what the contract offer was as far as average annual value on a short-term deal with Pete Alonso. They were fine with the structure. It was the money that they could not get their head around and decide to go in a different direction already with Jesse Winker. Welcome in, everybody. Holly, Master Vinman, Cowboys Nation, Mark. I'm so woke. God Ghost, Cowboys Nation, Graham. Appreciate all you guys joining us tonight. A lot happening around the world of baseball. Appreciate you guys hitting that like and subscribe and joining us here at the Upside, following us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Vinman, you apologize for the Cubs questions you want to ask for tonight. Well, there are a few that I would ask myself based off of the news we got today. Bring Alonso to Texas, please. I wouldn't say that's a 0% chance at this point. Texas does have some money to spend, and if they decide to go the trade route for a closer, maybe they flip out a John Gray to create salary flexibility. If I were in the Rangers front office, would I be trying to recruit Pete Alonso at this point? No, I would not. But I think there's many teams that are going to come out of the woodwork now for Pete Alonso after he does not get a deal with the New York Mets. Now, other teams that have been connected to him so far this offseason, the Los Angeles Angels first and foremost come to mind, the San Francisco Giants, and the Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, the Toronto Blue Jays, who do have Vlad Guerrero Jr. headed towards free agency next year. Maybe they decide to go ahead and poach a free agent first baseman this year in advance of him possibly leaving town. Just a bit outside. Rest in peace, legend. Absolutely. Bob Uecker, one of the special people in baseball history. Graham, the unnamed team supposedly in on Alonso. If there is one, Cubs. I won't say Angels, as you will get a rant mode. Well, I think the Angels are one of the teams that are in there. They're still looking to do a big splash, and I'm guessing with the cost coming down a little bit after another suitor falls by the wayside for Alonso, maybe it'll be a splash that they can afford. Would I go that direction? Probably not. But hey, it's the Angels. It's what they do. You can't teach a dog or an old dog new tricks, as they say. But the Cubs would be an interesting one. They've been looking for some lineup additions. They were the team yesterday that was in pursuit of Alex Bregman. Maybe they're the team in pursuit of Pete Alonso here as well, as they try to push for a contending team in 2025. Mets and Alonso relationship officially over. I wouldn't say officially over yet until he signs somewhere else. I just think it's highly unlikely that he signs at this point. I would say all talks have pretty much ground to a screeching halt at this point. But I think it's just a matter of time now before he starts getting some rumors elsewhere. Tim, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Drew Nuts, thank you for joining us once again. Player Time, welcome back. Mets waiting on Vlad to hit the market next season. That's entirely likely. I think the Mets are going to be looking for an impact first baseman like Vlad Guerrero, and I think this might be the reason why they decided to go 1 year on Jesse Winker rather than the 1 year with an opt-out for Pete Alonso. Maybe they would have just done a traditional 1 year plus an opt-out, or an opt-in anyway for the club, a club option rather than a player option for Pete Alonso. But Pete Alonso not going to do that, I would imagine. Tim, can't wait for one of these players finally get signed. Right there with you, my friend. The one player I'm really waiting for right now. I know it's not going to be the sexiest name on the market, but you look at Tanner Scott in that relief market. This is the latest we've ever seen relievers really wait to be able to sign. We've got over 150 free agents still out there right now. John Heyman wrote a great article about that today. Why players are starting to get a little frustrated, why they're not able to sign deals, because these guys at the top of the market are still delaying things. And the biggest reason for this, I would say, is going to be Tanner Scott. Not Bregman, not Santander, not Alonso, but that's going to be Tanner Scott right now. I mean, the relief market usually gets solved early in free agency. usually by the winter meetings, maybe a week or two after, usually by Christmas, most of the top-end relievers are signed. Right now, you look at the top-end relievers, none of them have really signed. You got Estevez still out there, Kirby Yates is still out there, Tanner Scott is still out there, Jansen is still out there. Several guys are still out there. There's only a few names that have really moved. The trade market has a little bit, and then you get Aroldis Chapman, players like that off of the free agent market, but none of the big fish have really moved yet, and that's really what's holding up a lot of the free agency right now. Once you get some of those relief arms off the block there, I'd imagine that things really start moving a lot better, not just for relievers, but position players as well, because they'll know where those free agent dollars are going to the bullpen, see how much money they have left to spend on position players, and on down the line the thing goes. But Tanner Scott's the one reason I think right now that would really have cleared things up more than what we've seen in years past. You're hearing the Giants are proposing a trade to the Jays for Vlad. I've heard several different teams have proposed trades to the Toronto Blue Jays for Vlad Guerrero Jr. Do I think any of them are consummated before the start of the season? I do not. I think the Jays right now are pushing their fullest effort, putting all their effort into trying to get an extension done with Vlad Guerrero Jr. before the deadline of the opening of spring training. I think that's where they are actively pursuing negotiations right now. Saw a couple of different articles that they were actually discussing things today with him as far as an extension. So good news for the Blue Jays is that things might finally be getting into a positive realm this offseason. They make the free agent acquisition of bringing in Jeff Hoffman. Maybe they get an extension done with Vlad Guerrero. If they were to get that extension done and a guy like Santander is still out there, a guy like Bregman is still out there, that would be a whole different situation for those guys to consider about their long-term future there in Toronto if they knew Vlad Guerrero was signed long-term. Or, as the other rumor that we heard today, as Pete Alonso might be signing there if they were to get that. Another piece, a long-term piece that would be there in Toronto, making things more interesting in the free agent markets for Santander and Bregman. Master Vinman, Cubs are rumored to be favorites for a few pitchers, including Jack Flaherty. Kyle Finnegan, what is your opinion on the chances of that actually happening? Finnegan, I would say very high. I think they need to get a high-end leverage type of a pitcher. Finnegan fits that to a T, and I don't think he's going to cost a whole heck of a lot. Now, Jack Flaherty, I would have liked to have seen them go after him before they made the signing of Colin Ray. Does the signing of Colin Ray rule them out as far as trying to acquire additional starting pitching? Absolutely not. But I think that the bigger needs on that roster are just improving the overall talent on the team, whether that's adding a starting pitcher, adding somebody with a good high ceiling there offensively, or adding a couple of high leverage arms. The Cubs could do any number of things to improve this roster, especially when they have an organizational mandate to try to win in 2025. They said they are all in on 2025. That's why they make the trade for Kyle Tucker. And the news on Kyle Tucker today is that they finally reached an agreement after submitting numbers for arbitration. If you'll remember a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago, we were pretty hard on the Cubs. They make the trade for Kyle Tucker, and the first real experience that he has with the club is what exactly they're going to say negatively about him in an arbitration hearing. Thankfully, they don't get it that far and agree to a $16.5 million contract. Kyle Tucker was looking for 17.5. The team countered at 15, and they met a little bit over halfway. So good on the Cubs for realizing the error of their ways. For me, though, is that extra million really worth it to try to stick it to Kyle Tucker here to make sure that you keep your budget? Just because you're going to have to deal with him again in free agency next year, and then he can leave and go literally anywhere else. Why in the world would you want to create any negative animosity, any twinge of negative thought? Let any thought like that creep into the back of the mind of Kyle Tucker that says, hey, when push comes to shove, the Cubs are going to try to do what's best for them, and they're trying to woo me and try to show me how they're going to do everything in their power to make me the happiest player they possibly can. And we just saw, after trading all these assets, Cam Smith, Isaac Paredes, and another pitcher there to the Houston Astros to acquire me. 1 year left. You're trying to go all out for 2025. And your first instance with me is you're going to try to push me into an arbitration hearing, and you're not just going to give me what you think you're worth? Come on now. This is the decision that the Cubs should have made all along, is giving him the 17.5. Thankfully, they at least got a contract agreed to before they got into a hearing, but some big questions need to be answered by that Cubs front office after the season if they're unable to get an extension done or sign him in free agency. So, big risk that they took bringing him in, and even bigger risk that they took not agreeing to a contract before you get to exchanging the numbers phase of arbitration, and then not giving him the number that he's looking for. Just, again, seeds of doubt, seeds of doubt, seeds of doubt. allowing another team to jump in at that tiny little sliver of a crack is open now for a team to come in there and say, hey, they tried to pinch every penny with you. We'll never do that. We'll give you the contract you want. We'll let you have all the amenities that you could possibly hope for on the back end of that deal. A suite, you got it. You want security for your family, you got it. You want, whatever, special perks that you want. Your favorite parking spot, we got you. Now, those might not seem important when you're talking about a, $350, $400 million contract, but those perks, those mean something to the player. And yes, the dollar figure will always trump everything else. But if you're already pinching pennies at this point, how far are you really willing to go when you're going to be competing against the likes of the Mets, the Yankees? I'm sure the Phillies will at least be mentioned in there at a certain point for his services. The Blue Jays are going to be in there. The Nationals are going to be spending next year. There's going to be a hefty market for Kyle Tucker's services, and you're pinching pennies this year. Let's see how it goes this year and see if they can win. If they do, maybe winning cures all evils. But I don't think they're going to be winning the World Series, and I think the Cubs did themselves no service. They didn't do themselves any favors by going about this entire transaction with Kyle Tucker the way they did. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Graham, is Boris looking to break the first base AAV record with Alonso? Absolutely he is, which, unless I'm mistaken, he's looking for 31.1 AAV. The reason why he's doing that is because he's got some other big free agents coming up that are first basemen. And if you look at where the numbers are for first base right now, they're down across the sport. I mean, first base DH types are not getting paid right now, and he's got a big one coming. And we'll see if they get that contract done. But for me, Pete Alonso's going to have to reset that market just a little bit. Scott Boras loves to reset the market for any position that he's trying to, really, generate a great contract for. And I think he might have overplayed, or at least, lasted a little bit too long on the market with Pete Alonso. I think, rotten luck having so many holes fill in, within one weekend really dried up a lot of the market for Pete Alonso. Then the Mets look like they're trying to be a little bit stingy with their money right now for whatever reason. But we'll get into the Mets angle of that here in just a moment. But Boras, who else is he going to try to compete and try to get good offers for Pete Alonso? Is he going to go to the Washington Nationals? Nope. They already brought in Nathaniel Lowe. Is he going to go to the San Francisco Giants? Well, they already had a good offer on the table for Corbin Burns. Maybe there's money there for him, but they have a prospect coming there. You look at the Chicago Cubs. They could use another bat in that lineup. Maybe fill in there for Cody Bellinger. But they don't exactly have a lot of money, and they're looking to add to that bullpen, maybe a starting pitcher, and is one bat like Pete Alonso enough to really push them over the top in the Central? We shall see. Then, of course, the other team I mentioned, the Toronto Blue Jays, maybe, just maybe, if the extension talks go poorly with Guerrero, they can go ahead and get their guy in Pete Alonso, and then worry about trading him at the deadline, him being Vlad Guerrero Jr. What happened with Alonso? It sounds like the Mets are moving on from Pete Alonso. 1 year, $8 million, 1 year, $7.5 million deal anyway with Jesse Winker. Performance bonuses on the backside of this. But the Mets look like they're moving on from the Pete Alonso market here. Boras always tries to reset the AAV. Most often he does. Yes, he's usually very effective and successful at doing so. Alonso to the Sox would be a nightmare. To the Red Sox, they already have Tristan Casas. They are looking for some thump. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Red Sox threw their hat in the ring just to see what the numbers might look like. But the fit there would be a little bit tougher for me. With Casas being there, with Devers being there, I think Bregman fits a little bit easier because you can at least play him at second or third base. Devers can play DH, first base, third base for you. I think Bregman would be a little bit better fit as far as trying to shoehorn him in to that lineup. Alrighty, Cowboys Nation, I don't think he re-signs with Toronto after the way they handled him. With the way Guerrero has been handled, they should have re-signed him to a contract extension well before this. Yes, I will give you that. But as far as mishandling him, I don't think that part has really gone. I don't think it's really done anything negatively to Guerrero. Sure, they tried to push the pedal down a little bit too far, I think, over the last couple of years. Just things did not work out in their favor as far as trying to win a World Series or win the division or anything along those lines. Just underperformances by the team as a whole. Now, Barrios was supposed to be the next great thing as far as their starting pitchers. Obviously, he's not exactly an ace at this point. Maybe he's a good number 3 on a good day. but this team really hasn't performed the way they had expected to. Now, Vlad Guerrero could get a great contract. We heard rumors out there just a couple of days ago that the Jays were preparing a great offer for Guerrero in the market of what he was looking for. And today we got multiple headlines that Guerrero was actively discussing a contract extension today with the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, if they get that contract done, absolutely great. Like I said, I think it resets how free agents view the Toronto Blue Jays going into the rest of this offseason. Maybe they go after Jack Flaherty. Maybe they go after Alex Bregman with renewed fervor. But getting a guy like Vlad Guerrero signed long-term would change the entire outlook of that organization. And that's what I'd be focusing my first, second, and third efforts on to try to get that done here before we get to spring training. That's the big piece in your lineup, because if you don't have him signed long-term and he looks like he's going to be heading towards free agency, there's no guarantee he comes back after the year. So I think that's got to be the first, second, and third priority for the Blue Jays right now, and hopefully they can get that one done before spring training. Santander, there's probably some really good players still out there. There's plenty of really good players still out there, David. Appreciate you joining us. Part of the Sasaki effect, I think that has something to do with it, but I think it's pretty much a two-team race with a little bit of an outsider effect there for Sasaki, with the Blue Jays still being in the running there. You agree when Scott falls, the reliever market will light up? I agree there. I think Scott, because of the money he's requesting, is really holding things up. Kirby Yates, I don't think with a 2-year, 3-year commitment, if he somehow got a 3-year commitment from somebody, would be holding things up. It's Tanner Scott on the relief side that's holding things up. He's looking for 480. He's not going to get it, but with the Mets being involved, maybe, just maybe, he can convince some of these other teams to pony up a little bit extra money. Looking at the Dodgers, they're the favorite for him. Maybe instead of getting 4 for 60, he gets 4 for 70 from them because he's still talking to the Mets and Yankees there. Graham, the Jays GM and front office are trying to save their jobs with who they're trying to sign. Yes and no. Graham, I got a little bit of insight into the front office structure there. The ownership there is really trying to push to try to win in 2025. That's why they have an organizational mandate to try to win in 2025. Whether we believe they're in a good spot to try to do so or not, that's what ownership wants to do. Now, this whole offseason, we've had the framework has been, hey, these guys are headed towards expiring deals. They're trying to save their jobs. That's why they're trying to do the owner's bidding. And if it doesn't work, which we don't expect it will, they'll be moving on. Well, Shapiro, Ross Adkins are all in really good lockstep with the ownership there, and they might well be able to keep their jobs even if things go poorly this year. So while the Jays don't necessarily look like a contending team this year, ownership wants them to try to push things to the floorboard to try to win this year. And that's on ownership. If the Jays GM is doing everything he can do to do what the owner is bidding him to do, then by golly, it looks like he might keep his job even if things go poorly. So, those of us on the outside think that this is just completely the wrong tact for them to try to take this year, that they should be trying to offload some assets right now and try to maximize the return that they can get, go through a retool, rebuild phase, and get ready for the next era of Toronto baseball. But their farm system isn't great. Their roster on the Major League side isn't great either. They're probably at best, fourth best team in that division right now. At best, maybe they get the final wild card spot if no other wild card gets in there from the Central or the AL West. Highly unlikely, to put it as a understatement, would be saying to put it lightly anyway. That would be a massive understatement. But I think the Jays, should be doing those things. But if ownership wants them to try to push for contention, you got to do what your owner wants you to do. How many times, have all of us had a boss? We can see the clear error in the decision, but our boss tells us to do it a certain way. It takes us 3 times the length of time to do it, rather than the idea that we had to make things that do something a little bit more effectively. And instead of doing it our way, we chose to do it the way our boss tells us to do it because they're our boss. And, if the GM there is doing what the owners are bidding him to do, he's doing what he can to save his job. So we'll see what happens with the Jays. Who are the top free agents for 26 outside of Tucker and Vladdy? There's a few others. Bo Bichette's going to be on that list. Adolis Garcia of the Rangers could be on that list. I believe he's a free agent at the end of the year. Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Michael King, Luis Arraez. There's several free agents that I'm, just off the top of my head, those are a couple of them. Let's see here, try to catch up on a few of these other comments. Whether you like it or not, the polar bear in Arlington, Texas meme is getting recreated. Possibly. Morgan Fay, welcome in. I hope that Roki will be with Blue Jay. I mean, if you get a guy like Vlad Guerrero to sign an extension, all bets are off. Maybe Roki does decide to go there, but I think the two favorites are clearly the Dodgers and Padres at this point. A little bit surprised the Blue Jays are still considered as one of the finalists there, but apparently he liked what he heard from the Blue Jays because he was there for a couple of days taking meetings. Now, Toronto is a little bit further out of the way than some of the other destinations that he's had to go to, so I understand maybe taking a little extra time there since you're already there. Go ahead and learn about the city, see what it has to offer for you, those kinds of things. But I still think he's going to be destined for the Los Angeles Dodgers, most likely. Padres, to me, would be a second-place runner-up here. But yet again, the Blue Jays might very well finish up with a "Hey, we tried" banner hanging there for Roki Sasaki. Dodgers anointed the champions already. There won't be any long-term contracts this year. So you're saying because the Dodgers are looking like they're going to win the World Series this year because they're the favorite is why teams might not look at Alonso, Bregman, etc. on a long-term deal? I don't necessarily agree with that one. I would say, all teams are still trying to build for the future, and signing Bregman to me wouldn't exactly be a negative investment. Now, Pete Alonso in years 3, 4, 5 might be a negative investment, but Santander I think is still going to be a good, worthwhile investment as well. Cubby Noel, welcome in. Jonathan Dill, appreciate you joining us once again. Tucker was always going to be a free agent. This ordeal is a nothing burger. He was always going to be a free agent, yes, but the entire purpose of this, fiasco with arbitration, what does it serve if not to, disincentivize the player from trying to re-sign with your team in the offseason, either as an extension or once you get to the offseason next year in free agency. So only bad things could happen by going about this the whole way the Cubs have gone about it with Kyle Tucker, but not agreeing to a contract before you get to the exchanging numbers phase. Why not just get the contract done before that point and don't let any animosity build up or any questions begin to percolate in the mind of the player? Only bad things happen when you go about it that way. It wasn't like they caved to him and said, "Hey, you want 17 and a half? You know what? We'll let you have it. We just traded for you. What the heck is an extra $1 million off of what we agreed to?" I mean, in the bigger picture of things, you want the player to understand that you prioritize him, the player, to try to sign there long term. Now, you may have the best contract on the books, when it comes to free agency next year. But I think the track record of the Cubs tells us other teams are going to be a higher bidder. So where's the reason why he would stay with the Chicago Cubs? Because they certainly didn't lay out the red carpet for him so far. We'll see if they do so during spring training, how they utilize him, how they use him in the lineup, how they structure their roster, how they continue to build in 2025. But right now, if I'm Kyle Tucker, I'm happy to be in Chicago, but the first experience I have is going through the process of exchanging numbers for arbitration, getting ready for an arbitration hearing, only to have them, kind of meet me a little bit over halfway in the middle, I suppose what you'd say is the silver lining here, is they could have just chopped it right down the middle, but maybe they gave him a little extra because he's Kyle Tucker. I think that's the only positive way you could spin that one around. Jonathan, good night. I think it's highly unlikely the Jays would sign Vlad before the season. My reason is Vlad is looking at the Soto contract and will test the market. I would agree, but I don't think he's going to get anywhere near the Soto contract. I think 400 is easily attainable now for Vlad Guerrero Jr. Demon D, welcome in. That said, $16.5 million could have offered the first go-around. That's kind of what I'm saying there, Cubby. Please no disrespect, but has there been any chance that he wouldn't be going to the Dodgers? I'm not a Dodgers fan. I think he's going to go to the Dodgers all the way around. I would like Alonso in Philly. I don't think there's a spot for him in Philly. They don't have the money to be able to sign him either. Philadelphia is pretty much hamstrung with any financial commitments that might be coming in. They might be able to get a small-time deal, $3 to $5 million, but they certainly are not going to be able to afford a $15 million player, let alone a $25 million player. You're a Tigers fan? Okay. Where do you think Roki will sign? I'm going to say the Dodgers. Ethan, welcome in. Maybe Rangers are going to sign Alonso. I believe Vlad Jr. next year more likely. I would say no on Alonso. I don't think they have any impetus to try to sign him this year. The only reason why would be to try to capitalize on an opportunity in the market. But I still don't like the player. I'd rather have the multi-positional players that the Rangers have and the flexibility that they have financially to try to add a player at the deadline. I do think Guerrero is going to be a significantly better player long-term than Pete Alonso, and I think there's going to be a heavy number of teams with interest. I'm sure the Rangers will at least test the temperature on his market in the offseason next year. Mr. Vinman, if the Cubs are finished with any additions, your thoughts on Ben Brown as a number 5 starter or bullpen role? bullpen role. He had a 3.58 ERA in 55 innings and a 3.23 ERA in 8 starts. I still think he probably starts the season in the bullpen. I think they're going to use Colin Ray as the number 5 starter. But if things work out a little bit differently, maybe in spring training he beats him out for that number 5 spot, then maybe he gets that role. Lucas, Rangers fan, don't X me. Kyle Tucker 2K25, possibly if they move on from Adolis Garcia. But I think they're going to prioritize pitching once again. Also, Porter Hodge as a closer. I don't think they're going to go with a closer option like that. I think they're going to go with a more proven guy. I think they'll go with the trade market route, or maybe one of the, like a Kenley Jansen type in that ninth inning. I don't think they're going to go with a guy that's homegrown right now because they don't really have anybody proven in the ninth inning role. 39 appearances, 43 innings, a 1.88 ERA for Porter Hodge, as you mentioned there. Great numbers, but has he proven it at the track record of having to save games in the ninth inning? Has he been the closer? Is he a guy that really has that intestinal fortitude to be able to handle that dimension? And for me, I think that's why they're going to go the free agency route and make an addition there. Graham, for a market to get tasty, in my opinion, you need for the New York teams, LA teams, and maybe the Jays to be fighting for a player. This time, I think Boris has messed up with 2 players, and he has others in free agency. I think he's actually done very well. He got a lot of guys signed early. He took Blake Snell, a guy that had struggled to sign last year, got his deal signed early, got a great AAV out of it. I think he's done a really great job. The Soto contract, of course, the biggest contract ever in professional sports history, not just baseball, but professional sports history as well. As far as quote-unquote messed up, we're still, 3-4 weeks away from spring training. Let's slow down on the messed up talk, or hey, Boris has overplayed his hand. We hear that all the time from fan bases out there, and yet Boris always seems to get the contracts. Now, last year, he waited all the way up until the very last minute, got the short-term deals for Snell and Montgomery. Obviously, Snell was able to parlay that into a long-term contract. That's why I think Snell signed early. Boris made good on that one, because of how poorly it went last year, because he was looking to get that long-term deal last year. Montgomery, on the other hand, just waited and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited for the Rangers to come around, and ultimately the Rangers said, we don't have the money for you, and he may still be a part of the Texas Rangers organization before spring training actually kicks off, but that's the reason why he waited so long to get a deal done, ultimately going to the Arizona Diamondbacks, because, hey, they were just in the World Series. Maybe I can go there on a one-year deal, prove it, and when the Rangers have money next year, maybe they come after me at that point, or some other team with some big-time money as well. But ultimately, the year could not have gone any worse for Jordan Montgomery, and he will be traded with the majority of his contract eaten by the Diamondbacks, and hopefully he'll get a solid solid foundation to begin with this year, getting a full spring training with the club rather than the Boris compound that he did last year. Paranormal, welcome in. Anything happened today? We did get a couple of headlines. We'll go through those in just a moment. Nicholas, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. What's the news and rumors around the league and what's going on with the Yankees? Appreciate it. As always, I just dropped the like button for you. Thank you, Paranormal. I really do appreciate you guys joining us tonight. As far as the Yankees, not too much rumors. More rumors again on Marcus Stroman today is that they're looking to deal him. I believe, was it Rosenthal? Somebody from The Athletic posted an article about Montgomery and Stroman both being actively shopped right now as we are getting closer to pitchers and catchers reporting. But the news around the league, of course, is Pete Alonso will not be returning to the Mets. The Mets get Jesse Winker. Cubs get Kyle Tucker's arbitration case done. And unfortunately, Bob Uecker has passed away at the age of, I believe, he was 90 years old. So big blow to the baseball world today there. Cowboys Nation, Manoah might be the biggest blow up by a pitcher I've seen. Kid looks solid, and then, well, yes, but Manoah's going to be coming back from injury this year. I believe he's going to be coming back around the trade deadline. I think he's got a really good chance to be a solid pitcher once again, but injuries, the yips, whatever you want to call it, really have sidelined his career, or sidetracked his career. Hopefully he can get back on the right track this season when he gets healthy. Player time, is it just me? I don't think Vlad is worth the 28.5. Yeah, it's just you. He is worth every penny of that 28.5. Honestly, I was expecting him to get a little bit north of 30 through arbitration. To get 28.5 is a win for the Blue Jays, honestly. But you got to get that extension done first and foremost if you're a Blue Jays front office member. That's where I would be trying to focus all of my efforts. But as far as the value, $28.5 million, I mean, he was in line to get $30 million. That's what the expectation was in the industry by all people who study arbitration cases. He was going to get around $30 million, maybe a little bit above that. And 28.5 is a little bit below what we were all expecting him to sign. But Vlad is still a great impact bat. He has a little bit more defensive versatility, a much better range at first base than Pete Alonso. He can play a little bit of third base as well. A little bit of a decent base runner at times, a little bit more speed on the base pass than Pete Alonso, but he's by no means a great base runner. Doesn't have those instinctual base running techniques that his dad had. We saw in the playoffs how he was picked off a second base against the Twins, how poorly that base running snafu really worked for them in the postseason. But Guerrero is still a great player, really rises to the moment, a lot like Juan Soto does in the playoffs. He is an impact bat through and through. Is he worth 28.5? You golly gee bet you believe he is. Let's see here. He's definitely worth it in your opinion. I would agree. Yo, brother, how's it going? Late to the show again. Anything Yankees? They're still looking bullpen. They're still looking second base, third base. They're still looking to move on from Stroman. I think things are held up right now by the movement of Marcus Stroman. Hopefully they can get a deal done with a team like the Marlins, the A's, or the Rays. Marlins really need to take on some cash, not just a little bit. They need to take on a ton of cash in order to avoid having a grievance filed against them. Because the revenue sharing money, they have to be able to get 1.5 times what the revenue share threshold is. And right now they're well beneath that. They would have to take on Stroman plus additional pieces at this point to even reach that floor. Maybe they'll be a fit for one of these mega players out there, these superstars that are not able to get a long-term deal done. Maybe they're a home for a Pete Alonso and give him, say, $40 million in 1 year. A crazy number like that just to be able to make themselves compliant with a Players Association. Alonso then can hit free agency next year if he has a great year with the Marlins. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. But I'm just saying that's the kind of hole the Marlins are in, that they need to acquire that much salary in order to avoid having a grievance filed against them. Master Vinman, hypothetically, what would a trade value look like for the Cubs if they were to pursue Dylan Cease? Well, Dylan Cease has around 25 value, if I remember correctly, this year. So you'd have to be including, multiple young assets. We can go into that here in just a moment if you'd like. Graham, that's interesting about Shapiro. Food for thought. Indeed, thanks again. It does explain certain things. Yes, it does. I mean, front office is in lockstep with the ownership group there. Nicholas, the Jays won't get Sasaki. Vlad and Bo are out. They need to trade them and work on a rebuild. They're not going to get Sasaki. I'll agree with you there. I think he's probably going to go to the Dodgers or Padres. The Dodgers, to me, seem like the slight favorite, though, at this point. I think the Jays also ran in that finalist group. As far as trading Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero, they're not going to do that until the trade deadline, and only when they're out of contention completely. But until then, they're going to try to push all the chips to the middle to try to win in 2025. They also need a nice rebound year from Bo Bichette more than anything else. Lucas, Bo Bichette is probably going to get what Willie Adames got. Possibly. There's a world in which Bo Bichette gets well beneath that if he has another poor year this year. He was well below league average as a player last year. I think he would be well served to have a good offensive year. Doesn't even need to be great. Just a good offensive year to show he's able to shake off the bad year he just had. And then we could be talking about a deal in the Willie Adames range. If he gets back to being, a MVP level player, say to Bobby Witt level numbers, then we're talking significantly more money. But right now, I think he would have to have a nice rebound year to get the Willie Adames contract, because right now, if he has another poor year, he might be wishing for that contract next offseason. David, who'll be the player to break Soto's contract? Maybe J-Rod, Ellie De La Cruz? Maybe. I think we're probably 3 to 5 years away from a player even getting close to that right now. I would have thought a player like Bobby Witt might have been the player to get there, but that's not going to happen. Maybe a player like, I don't know. We're talking about players just making it into in their rookie year. That's the type of players I think could be there. Ellie De La Cruz makes some sense, but I'm not sure he'd have the longevity. J-Rod, I don't think Seattle would be able to give him that type of a contract. We're talking about players, think of a Ronald Acuna fresh out of the minor leagues. If he, player in his prime, that might do something like that. But of course, Acuna signed a team-friendly deal. But I'm talking about a player of that stature. That's what we're really going to have to see a Soto-type contract once again. Master Vinman, let's see here. Who won the international signings? For me, Still up in the air with Sasaki because I think that has a lot to do with how a lot of teams are going to finish off their international signing pools. But I think we're still probably about another 2 or 3 weeks away from seeing a clear winner there. D-Rod, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Tim, welcome back. If you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Got about 70 of you guys with us right now, about at 30 likes. Let's see if we can bump that number up over 40 here in the next couple of minutes. So if you guys wouldn't mind helping us out, hit that like and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Follow us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Lucas, Gunnar Henderson looks most likely to me to break that Soto number. Possibly. That's the kind of player I'm talking about. Players hitting year 1, year 2 of their deals. Those are the players that I think are going to have a chance to break that Soto deal. Maybe Gunnar Henderson gets there. If he gets to that MVP caliber player year after year, he could very well be in that argument there. Tim, are the Blue Jays going to keep either Bichette or Vlad? I would be trying to keep Vlad first and foremost. I think he is the beginning, the end, and the middle for them. I think he is the sun, the moons, and the stars. I think Vlad Guerrero changes everything for the Blue Jays, both this year and next year, if they can get that extension done before spring training. Everyone here is awesome, great community. Absolutely paranormal. I couldn't agree more. We really do have a great community here joining us. So if you guys, enjoy this type of content, enjoy the way I'm able to, bring up your comments here. I know I've fallen behind here, but I'm trying to keep up as best I can. If you guys want to make sure that I get your comment, you guys are always welcome to send a super chat. But I try to keep up here, and I really enjoy the communication that we have here. So thank you guys for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Let's see here. Tim, I don't know that didn't know that Vlad played 12 games at third base last year. Yes, he did. He does have that defensive versatility. Paranormal, I did hear that Stroman took down everything the Yankees on his Instagram, so he might be pissed. Does it matter at this point? Strowman's not exactly a key cog on that team at this point. Now, if he still is on the roster come spring training, then yeah, it'll become a talking point. But I don't think there's any world that he will be on that roster come spring training. I think there's too many teams that need to acquire starting pitching. I think there's too many teams that need to add payroll, that there is going to be an opportunity for him to be traded before spring training. There's no need to carry him on the roster going into spring training. So, like I said, the Marlins, the A's, the Rays all need to add some salary to their payrolls here. Paranormal wonder where he's going. If I had to guess, I would say it's a team like the A's or Marlins. Cowboys Nation, I can't see Gunnar bringing in more than Jobby Witt at this point, in my opinion. But the sucks he's a Boris guy for my O's might be the one guy David says he's not going anywhere, hopefully, but yeah, I agree with you there. But to me, Bobby Witt, if he hadn't signed that extension, I think Bobby Witt would be the guy that I would be trying to point to right now. But I'm not sure he would get close to the Soto number, but he might get over 500 if he had waited just a little bit longer. David, the Marlins should take Stroman and DJ from us. That's kind of what I'm thinking. These teams that are struggling or going to be bottom feeders this year should be trying to acquire bad contracts from these big teams. These cash-strapped teams, they should be trying to take advantage of them. We posited a trade the other day about the Angels trying to do something like this, taking a couple of prospects from the Yankees to acquire the contracts of DJ LeMahieu and Marcus Stroman, allow the Yankees the financial flexibility that they need to make some moves. Meanwhile, they get some prospects for their trouble of taking on the deals. Same thing with the Philadelphia Phillies. Take on the contract of Taijuan Walker, Nick Castellanos, among others. Take on those bad contracts. If you're a team that is below 500 and is not expected to compete for a wild card, teams like the White Sox, the Angels, the Marlins, teams in that category, the Rockies, should all be looking to try to acquire more prospects by any and all means necessary. Use that money that you have to spend on free agency, Artie Moreno. Make your big splash by trading for bad contracts of other clubs and bringing in some top-level elite prospects, some blue chippers. That's the way I would be trying to do it if I were the Angels or one of these other teams in those situations. But, the last time we really saw this was with the Los Angeles Dodgers, where they took on the bad contracts of the Red Sox, Carl Crawford, Adrian Gonzalez, David Price, etc., and only gave back middling prospects in return. Ultimately, that's what really kickstarted the whole thing for the Dodgers. They were able to, build a contending team, a division-winning team at that point, and have not looked back since those trades that they made, and only gotten better ever since. Tim, I heard this year's Tampa Bay home field is a great hitting environment. You betcha. That's what happens when you go to the minor leagues. You get smaller parks more bandboxes, and you're going to see big offensive numbers from the Rays this year. Same thing with the A's. They already were a great offensive team last year. They're going to be even more prolific this year because they're going to be playing 81 games in a minor league ballpark in Sacramento. They're going to see some crazy offensive numbers in those ballparks this year. Let's see here. Liberty, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us. You still feel like the Angels will sign one of the big bats? Honestly, I'm beginning to think they will. You'd like them to sign Flaherty as well. I mean, you're still not going to win a wild card. You're going to short-circuit your development, but it does sound like that's the way the Angels are trending at this moment. I do think Flaherty has a good chance to sign with a team like the Cubs, the Braves, the Blue Jays, among others. D-Rod, the Rays' home field advantage this year will be great. Be a great sweating environment. I think they only have 8 games in Tampa, June, July. I mean, that ballpark that they have, they're going to have major renovations done to it this year. I don't think they'll be playing many games this year either. Master Vidman, thank you, Michael, and all your subscribers for providing an escape each evening to talk baseball. Hit that like button. Appreciate you, Master Vidman. Thank you. Thank you guys for all the support again. We'll go over some headlines here in just a moment as we finish catching up on these comments here. Clutch Crew, welcome in. Just saw Jeff Hoffman Blue Jays video on their channel, and he looks very excited and happy to be there. Well, I would be too if I just signed for almost $40 million with incentives. He signed, a $33 million deal, $6 million in incentives there. Could be a starter, could be a reliever there, depending on how they decide to use him, but still did very well off of a great year that he had in the first half. Had an all-star appearance out of it. And ultimately, things didn't work out in the second half for the Phillies or Hoffman, but was able to parlay that into a long-term deal. A player that started his career, pitching in Colorado at times, and never really looked like he was ever going to reach the potential. Found his real niche. Last year with the Philadelphia Phillies, and then was looking to get a long-term deal and was able to successfully get it after having an all-star campaign with the Phillies last year. Let's see here. David, who's going to emerge as the top prospect this year? As far as top prospect in the game, I think Sebastian Walcott for the Rangers has a real chance to get there. There's a few guys, that really could elevate their status this year. But as far as players who have a chance to win Rookie of the Year, who are going to start the season on the roster, or at least close to it by, May be on the Major League roster, we're talking Roman Anthony for the Red Sox. We're talking, on the National League side, Dalton Rushing for the Dodgers. Just trying to think off the top of my head here. There was another one I was just thinking of. Bear with me for just a second. What was his name? Dylan Cruz on the National League side of things has a chance to be there. Jackson Jobe for the Tigers has a real chance. Marcelo Mayer to a lesser extent. But if I had to bet on a player to really have a great year this year, possibly win Rookie of the Year, Dylan Cruz on the National League side, Roman Anthony on the American League side with the two that I would be looking at, along with Dalton Rushing as well. Let's see here. Got a couple more comments, and we'll get into some of the headlines. The Martian, possibly. There is an issue with DJ. He's a 10-5 guy, and I doubt he'd waive that to go to the Marlins. Well, it depends on what the incentive is for him to be traded. For me, if those 10-5 rights are great, but if he's not going to have a role on that team in New York, and if they can give him some type of an incentive, if there's a vesting option, or maybe extend him a year, or offer him some type of a playing time, or flipping him onto another team, or saying, hey, we'll give you this contract, go ahead and allow you to sign your release papers, and maybe he can latch on to another team elsewhere in free agency. Maybe he does something like that, but there are creative ways that you can use a 10-5 guy and still try to get him off of your roster. Alonso, 60 home runs in Tampa Bay. Yeah, in a minor league park, you betcha. I think a 60 home run number might actually be low. What do you think about the pitcher who the Yankees just got from the Cubs? Michael Arias, I think, was the guy that you're referring to there. I think he's a decent option. Somebody they're probably going to, give a chance to win a spot in spring training. But ultimately, I think he starts the season in the minors. And then they try to use him in the 5th, 6th, 7th as a, get me out of trouble type of a guy, fireman, if you will. But I'm not counting on big things for him. If you're counting on him in an 8th inning role at some point this season, I'd say your bullpen has really underperformed. But a decent piece. Could he have a great future with the Yankees? Possibly. But I think 2025, 26 is still too early to really know if he's going to be worth anything down the line. Jason Dominguez, I think, is a good chance to be one of the great rookies this year. cruise control. Alonso to the Phillies, to stick it to the Mets. I mean, that would be the way to stick it to him, sure, but I don't think the Phillies have the money to do so. He'd have to sign like a $5 to $15 million contract, and that certainly ain't happening. He would have rather just signed that with the Mets, because I'm sure that's what the Mets actually had on the table, something along those lines. He's looking for significantly more money, $25 to $30 million a year. I think he's looking to reset the first base market as well, so we will see what happens with him. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head over to X and see if anything is happening today. Cubs again looking for bullpen and bench. No surprise there. They're looking for a closer. So for those of you that are Cubs fans, there's your headline for the Cubs at the moment. New jerseys there for the Cubs. They're not bad. I don't really like them. I still miss the traditional Cubs uniform, the pinstripe, the actual Cub on the top, the C, all that works great. That's the best stuff there. David Wright, etc., etc. We're getting closer to Hall of Fame announcement as well. MLB Trade Rumors did a great article if you guys want to check that one out. I was reading a little bit of it while we were talking here as well about the Marlins needing to take on some cash because, again, they're going to have that grievance filed against them. And bad things can happen to them if they have that grievance because then they don't get the revenue sharing. They can have other issues as far as players trying to sign their long-term, other penalties that Major League Baseball can impose on them as well. So we'll see what the Marlins do as they try to add some payroll here before the start of the season. Welcome in, Roy. Appreciate you joining us once again. Michael, I told you last week Stearns was not feeling Alonso and they were moving on. You said no, but Alonso is as good as gone. Alonso is not valued. Well, you were right, Roy. I mean, I think I most certainly was wrong, but a lot of us were wrong as well. Alonso, I still thought was going to go back there, but ultimately it doesn't look like it's going to happen. At this point, I think all that's waiting now is for him to sign on the dotted line with another team. I don't think financially that they were willing to go that far by all accounts. It looks like Jesse Winker, 1 year, $7.5 million, might be their last major league hitter that they bring into that lineup. Now they're still looking for some bullpen help. They've been connected to Tanner Scott, which is mystifying on another level, and Tim Scott, other relievers as well. But we'll see what the Mets ultimately do from a financial situation. The one thing I didn't really touch on as far as the Alonso saga today is what does this mean for the Mets? Sure, you spend the $15,765 on Juan Soto. He basically takes over the role in the offense for Pete Alonso. Big upgrade, don't get me wrong, but who's going to be hitting behind him? The offense should perform better as a whole, yes. But now you have Vientos over there at first. DH are going to be using some combination of younger players over there at third base, giving some guys a day off with that DH spot. And I guess that could be a good thing for them long term, that they don't have the money tied up in a Pete Alonso. But if you'd signed a 3-year deal with the opt-outs after the first and second year, instead of making them player options, how about making them team options and then having the bat of Pete Alonso in that lineup still with Juan Soto? That would have been the best thing for them. Also, the second thing of this is what does this mean for their finances going forward? Does the contract 15 for $765 really have that big of an impact that they're not going to spend for a major starting pitcher in that rotation to add Pete Alonso to this lineup, but yet they're still willing to discuss a $20 million reliever not going to be their closer? Mystifying things coming out of the Mets right now. Mixed messages would be a good way to put it as far as how their pursuit of Tanner Scott, couples with the pursuit of Pete Alonso, following up on the Juan Soto signing and their pursuit of Corbin Burns, among other top free agent starting pitchers. All of those things don't necessarily square with one another. So at some point, I would like the GM there, David Stearns, to at least walk us through how their decision making really came about. How do they square the idea of spending the money on Soto, not spending the money on a starting pitcher, willing to spend the money, at least it seems like, on a top-end relief option, not for a closer, but for an eighth-inning setup guy, and then not willing to spend the money on your own homegrown guy who really wants to be there in Pete Alonso. I guess they're trying to, earmark more money towards the future, towards Vlad Guerrero Jr. next year. I suppose that's how you would frame the Pete Alonso argument, but it still doesn't make sense how you're willing to then go in the bullpen and spend it on a Tanner Scott over, say, a 3 or 4 year period. Now, it remains to be seen of how serious those discussions were, but Tanner Scott did have a meeting with the Mets a week ago. A little bit curious how they went about this whole entire process. Graham, Arias has a lightning fastball, but does have, like many young guns out there, control issues. Needs to sort some things, but a good ad, and it helps restock the farm with chips. I would agree there, Graham. Great analysis all the way around there. Pretty much perfect. nothing I can add to that one, honestly. You did pretty well there. Greg, if Pete Alonso is the best power hitter in the game, as you claim, why didn't the Mets want to add him? Because he's a one-trick pony, doesn't have the defensive versatility, and was going to be moved off of first base within a year or two at best. That's the reason why. Not just because you're a great power hitter doesn't mean you're going to get a great contract. Look at Joey Gallo. All the power in the world, but could never translate it to on-the-field performance. But he was able to transfer it to the field for a couple of years with the Texas Rangers. Did not perform at all in New York, and then his career just kind of snowballed from there as far as the negativity there. But you see where his contract is right now. He's still unsigned. Maybe he gets a non-roster invite today or at some point before spring training. I don't think his career is completely over. I think he does get a non-roster invitee type of a deal. But Pete Alonso is the case study of how you're able to translate that power into in-game performance. Now, he hasn't been able to figure out contacts, still rolls into ground ball double plays all the time, doesn't field the ball very well at first base, and very likely will be a power-hitting DH in a year or two at best anyway. And then we're really going to see his average annual value for his contract really start to drop. But as I claim, as you put it there, why doesn't he get the big money? Because he's a one-trick pony as a power hitter. There are other things that GMs really value: availability, being able to move a runner over, sacrifice flies, avoiding a ground ball double play, working a walk, contact hitting, all those kinds of things as well. That and the long-term salary that he would be looking for from other teams, that he's willing to give a short-term deal with opt-outs for player opt-outs after the first and second year. I'm sure the team wasn't necessarily comfortable with having him on the books for next year and the year after if he decided to opt in and stay with the Mets, especially when you had Vlad Guerrero coming up in free agency next year. I guess that's the thought process there for the Mets. Let's see here. Trying to catch up on a few of these comments here. Would the Yankees get anything if they traded DJ and or Stroman? Honestly, they'd have to attach assets to those pieces there. Tim, they wouldn't be getting much. They aren't going to get a return moving off the salary off the books. Yes, that's the benefit there as to why they would move those. Let's see here. Moving salary off the books. Yes, I agree. Alonso and Soto together. If Soto doesn't have legit bats around him, will just get to walk a lot and not do as much damage. Yes, the Mets still have some good offensive pieces that they could put behind him, but to me, Alonso would have been the best piece that hit behind Juan Soto. I think the power threat of Alonso would have forced you to come in the zone to Juan Soto a little bit more than, say, having a Jeff McNeil or a Starling Marte or a Alvarez hitting behind him. I think having a Pete Alonso there with the power really would have been a difference maker as far as the pitches that he would have seen, Juan Soto that is, as opposed to having a Jeff McNeil hitting behind him. Mets are putting their eggs in one basket to sign Vladdy in 26. They will have to go through the season and adjust in July at the deadline. Very possibly, maybe they add a first baseman at the trade deadline. Maybe Vlad Guerrero Jr. ultimately is a Met by the trade deadline. Those are all possibilities there. Graham, I'd say his first at bat back in the Bronx, he's getting walked just to annoy him. Possibly. D-Rod, the Winker signing could be posturing by the Mets. Is the timing coincidental? Honestly, I don't think so. I think the decision to make the signing of Jesse Winker was made hand in hand with the realization that that Pete Alonso is not going to be signing there long term. They went ahead and filled a roster spot there. Now, of course, maybe they circle back at some point, but ultimately I just don't think it's in the cards at this point. I think he will be signing elsewhere. It's just a matter of how much and how long of a contract does he get. Do the Yankees have the best pitching staff in the AL? No, I would say the Mariners still hold that reign at the moment. They have the best rotation in the American League for sure. Probably the best in the game. Maybe you could give a flame there to the Dodgers. Maybe if they get Sasaki, the Dodgers have the better rotation. But, Kirby, Gilbert, Castillo, Wu, I'm trying to think of all the starters that they've got there. They've got a really great five-man unit there, and they all perform well in St. Louis, or in Seattle anyway. It's just a shame that as far as their inability to recruit some talent, as far as offensive talent, via free agency or be able to acquire it in trade right now. They ultimately decided to keep the rotation. At least that's the way it looks right now, is they're not going to trade Luis Castillo before the season, and they're going to spend that $15 million that they had on Donovan Solano and maybe two more bats in that lineup. Solano is a nice piece, but they have more work to do there in Seattle. But for my money, I would say the Yankees are certainly in the top 3, maybe top 5. But for me, the Mariners are still a little bit better, both in the bullpen and in that rotation. I think the Mariners are a little bit better as far as a staff. A few years ago, nobody cared about defense, just offense. Guys like Alonso and Santander would have been off the board earlier. I agree there. I wonder if the Yankees' performance in the World Series changed that. Yankees' specific performance, I don't think that necessarily changed it. I think the total package of a player is becoming a lot more valuable than just a power hitting type, a one-trick pony type of a player. Just look at the last 10 years as far as first base, DH, how they've all been valued in the market, and almost all of them have been underpaid one-year deals over the past 10 years. If you're not Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson getting a deal there, really you don't see first basemen get paid anymore, and that's the difference in the game right now. But we'll see where he does go, where Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s contract ultimately comes in at. Those will be the next guys that really cash in. Let's see here. Did Anthony Rizzo sign with the team? If not, where's a good fit? He has not signed yet. As far as a good fit, maybe going back to the Cubs as far as a reunion. Alonso's would be a fit there with Chicago, but I think Rizzo would be a better one, lower cost, because the Cubs still need to address that bullpen. They are looking for bench pieces as well, so Rizzo really fits the mold there. I would say the Giants are another great fit. I thought Goldschmidt would have been the guy going to the Giants, and maybe Rizzo goes elsewhere, maybe to the Nationals. But I think with Goldie going to the Yankees, now getting a one-year stopgap option at first base while you have a prospect developing out there in San Francisco, I think Rizzo would be a good guy out there at first base for the Giants to sign. But those would be the two teams I'd be looking at, Cubs and Giants for Anthony Rizzo. Graham, David, it also could be the fact that Alonso and Bregman and Santander all have qualifying offers. It is out of many teams. It has put many teams off, in my opinion. I would agree there. Something to do with the qualifying offer, yes, but I would say just the limitations Alonso has defensively. Bregman, I think, because of his smaller stature, right-handed swing, home runs, etc. Those are some question marks there. Santander is a premium outfielder. Those are question marks. Maybe he's a product of playing in Baltimore, but I still think he's a good player overall. Does he hit another 44 home runs again next year? Remains to be seen. Miller, yes. D-Rod, Michael, since you said the Cards, who's playing first base for the Cards since Goldie is gone? Maybe Alonso? No. They have already moved over the Contreras brother. He's going to be playing first base for the Cardinals next year. He will not be catching. He has already made that transition. So that is your new first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals. Alonso will not be signing there. Alonso should have taken a one-year deal to hit behind Soto. He probably gets a huge deal next year after that. I'm sure the Mets are open to something like that. But I think he wanted player options for years 1, 2, and 3 of that deal, and ultimately decided, the Mets decided that they were going to move on and bring in Jesse Winker instead. Rockies for Rizzo, that would be brutal for his career. On the subject of the Cards, Arenado, I have a feeling might be headed our way. Just my gut, nothing else. That would be a great fit there with the Yankees. I think he'd be a good fit in New York. It's just a matter of, can they offload Stroman? Can they add enough, can they get enough money taken off of the deal from Arenado, allowing the Cardinals to eat some of that money that would make it palatable enough for the Yankees to be able to acquire? And Michael, welcome back. Did Kyle Tucker sign with the Cubs? He was already a member of the Cubs. It was the arbitration case that was solved today. He signed a $16.5 million deal. The arbitration case was $17.5. Kyle Tucker had submitted for, and the Cubs had countered at $15. They made a little bit over halfway at $16.5 today. D-Rod Yagram, I think he gets traded during spring training. Arenado, I would agree there. I think Arenado gets moved before spring training, but certainly before the start of opening day. All right, let's head over to MLB trade rumors, see if anything else is happening tonight. See if anything is going on there. Nothing too much. Head over to X again just to see if anything else is going. Nothing too much there. All right. No to Nolan. They need a third baseman or at least an infielder, period. However they're able to do it, however they're able to add an impact bat would be the way I would go. or they had a lefty bullpen arm like the likes of JoJo Romero. Again, the Yankees are looking for a bullpen piece, left-handed reliever right now as well. Alrighty. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Got a long day again tomorrow. My boss is out for the end of the weekend for her anniversary, so we'll be pulling an open to close shift today, tomorrow, and Saturday as well. But we will be live again tomorrow around 9 o'clock. Be sure to join us as well. We put out a video today. We'll put out a couple more videos, short videos tomorrow. Probably discussing a little bit of the coaching carousel in the NFL. Probably put one out about Alonso tomorrow in the Mets as well. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us over on X at UpsideAscend and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Stay safe out there, everybody. Thank you for having such a great chat tonight. Had a lot of fun with you guys, and we'll see you guys tomorrow evening. Y'all have a great one out there, everybody.